Hey everybody, Cabot Phillips here, Editor-in-Chief with Campus Reform. We are sitting right now in Vice President Mike Pence's ceremonial office. We're joined by his Chief of Staff, Mr. Marc Short. Marc, thanks for taking the time to sit down.
Cabot, thanks for coming in and joining us.
So I want to get right into it. The RNC kicked off last night the end of the week message that you want voters to have taken away from things when all this is said and done. What do you want that to be?
Well, Cabot, I think voters are going to have a really stark contrast this November. They'll have an opportunity to choose between hope and opportunity versus socialism and decline. And I think you're going to hear that laid out throughout the week of opportunities that we have to say, here's a pro-freedom agenda that's consistent with all of the tax reform, deregulation that helped create 7.5 million jobs before the pandemic broke out. And those are policies that we want to see continued. We also will cherish opportunities like school choice. I think that that's something that this administration has advocated. I think in a second term, you'll see us take an even more aggressive push for that. And you'll hear families in the next couple of days who have benefited from school choice opportunities. And so that'll be a key component of the agenda. But I think it's in stark contrast to where Democrats have painted a very dark picture of America, and a picture that I think the policies they're embracing of Bernie Sanders basically, in essence, saying that was once radical is now mainstream in our party. They're more or less fully embracing the unity package between Biden and Sanders that leads to a true socialist future for our country.
And so tangibly, when we talk about school choice, it's something that gets brought up a lot. Tangibly, for the average parent out there, what does that mean for them?
Well, you're going to hear parents tonight who talk about their child who was falling behind in a public school system and wanting to have an option as to where they send their child. And because of school choice options in states like Wisconsin, they had a choice and they moved their child to a different school where he is now thriving. Those are opportunities that every parent should have. You should not be restricted in your freedoms based upon the zip code you live in. You should be allowed to send your child to the school that would best benefit him or her. And those are policies that in many cases, there's a role for the federal government. In some cases, there's a large role for state governments. But we certainly can use the bully pulpit to advocate as to why we think those are choices that every parent should have for his or her own child.
Mm-hmm. So our audience is predominantly 18 to 25-year-olds. You're talking to them right now. What's your message to the young voter that maybe hasn't really been paying attention that much? They're on the fence. What do you say to them? What's your message to the young voters of America?
Well, you know, I think that being in college is an amazing, fun time, but it's also a very challenging time. And you're unfortunately today at most college campuses inundated with an intolerance of the left. I think that our administration wants to advocate that the colleges should be an opportunity for people to learn from all different sides and hear all different viewpoints. And so our administration is going to continue to advance pushes to protect free speech. We're very saddened to see in many cases college campuses limiting the full spectrum of debate inside the classroom. We want to make sure that those freedoms are protected. I think we also believe that this administration's policies when students come out of college are the ones that provide the most opportunity. Again, when you look back at the record of 7.5 million jobs created in the first 3 years of this administration, it should provide all sorts of upward mobility and opportunities for people to launch their careers. And I think that the policies that you look back to, the Obama-Biden administration and the slowest economic recovery in the history of our country coming out of a recession, I don't think we want to go back to that.
And it's interesting in talking with these students. I've been to 100 plus campuses. I've interviewed thousands of students on the ground. When you talk to them about the economy, many of them, they don't feel like it's benefiting them, even if it's going very well. They say, well, I'm not involved in the stock market. I'm not out here one of these corporate jobs. What do you say to them, the young person that feels disaffected? They don't see the positive impacts of the economy impacting them directly. What do you say to that kid that's about to graduate college this year about the economy?
Well, I remember being 22 years old as a long time ago, Cabot, but I probably wasn't fully invested in the stock market either.
Your portfolio wasn't strong in your dorm room?
But you have an opportunity to start, and you have an opportunity when there's all sorts of job creation to look at new opportunities for advancement. And I think that that's really what we want to make sure is that our economy is deregulated, the tax burden is lower, so that young people can begin to invest more and begin to have a larger and larger opportunity.
And so schools starting to reopen right now in the fall. We've seen a few COVID outbreaks on some campuses. They started to scale back. But one of the things we've been covering at Campus Reform is how there's kind of a bait and switch going on, where universities are charging full tuition, the students sign on the dotted line, and then they're told, well, actually, you're paying the full tuition, but you're not going to be able to come onto campus. What's your message to those schools, and what would the administration like to see this semester look like for universities as a whole?
Well, I probably feel that too personally, because I'm a victim of the bait and switch with my oldest son headed off to college for the first time this fall. He's already been delayed having the opportunity, and it appears that all of his classes now will be virtual. And I think that the learning environment is just different. And so we do encourage that students have an opportunity to learn inside the classroom. And if universities are not going to provide that, we do think there should be some sort of rebate provided to students. We look at the data constantly on the coronavirus, and we've learned a lot over the last 6 months. The reality is, for people 25 and younger, coronavirus is 10 times less fatal than the common flu. We don't shut down universities for common flu. Now, conversely, we recognize that coronavirus is more serious for older populations and for those that have comorbidities, and we do need to protect those faculty. And in cases, it probably is appropriate to have virtual learning. And in some cases where there could be an outbreak within a community, that could also create other consternation. And I think we've seen in some of those universities, the reality is that it's the community that houses the university that expresses concern about a lot of students coming back and potentially infections spreading out. So this isn't easy. It's not easy. Yeah. We don't pretend that it is. But the reality that we have to make sure people understand is that the risk to the student health is really incredibly low. Yeah. And the risk to that student not learning is serious. So universities have a lot of resources that they should be making sure they're taking advantage of to make sure the classroom is appropriate, but the students are provided in-classroom opportunity too.
So you mentioned some kind of rebate potentially for students. When would that qualify? Because we've had hundreds of students reach out to us at Campus Reform saying, what can I do? The university is kind of pulling the rug out from under me, and I was told I'm getting one thing. Contractually, is there a chance for you to require the schools to give money? What will that look like?
Yeah, I don't know that's going to be a federal overreach, Gab, I think that's something we would encourage universities to look at. And again, if you're going to be a university where there's going to be actually no in-classroom environment for the entire fall semester, it's kind of hard to justify, I think, some of the tuition that is being assessed. So it's probably a case-by-case situation.
So one of the other things we've been tracking and that your administration has brought a lot of attention to is China. And I think there's been a renewed focus even at the higher education level of keeping an eye out for what China is doing on campus with their Confucius Institutes. Just yesterday, a professor at Texas A&M was indicted and charged with working with the Chinese government, secretly selling information while having a contract with NASA. That we've seen at least a dozen instances of that this year alone. What is your administration doing to protect the integrity of our higher education system and protect our information from being sold to the highest bidder, in this case, the CCP?
Yeah, Cabot, it's obviously a complicated issue because we have the best universities in the globe, and we want to make sure that there are opportunities here for international students to come and to be a part of our universities. And at the same time, we hope that they provide opportunities to stay here and take all that they've learned on our campuses to help contribute to our economy and help contribute to other ways of innovation in America. What our concern, as you say, is specific to China, where we have seen, I think, them taking advantage of some of those opportunities by sending students here who then get involved in technology theft, intellectual theft, and bringing it back to China. And so that is a bigger concern, and therefore we've limited some of the student visas that we're offering to China, and that's going to be something that we continue to look at. We don't think that it's a one-size-fits-all, because not every nation is a bad actor in the way that China is, but that is the balance we try to strive, is that we want to make sure that international students find opportunities to take all they've learned and stay here and contribute to America. But at the same time, there is a national security element, and we've seen that China, on time and time again, has abused it. And as you say, they in some cases actually have taken resources from the Communist Chinese Party and invested it onto campuses here.
And so the DoD, the Pentagon, have come out and warned against the presence of Confucius Institutes on campus. Our viewers know very well at this point what those are: spreading misinformation in the classroom, influencing curricula, and all sorts of things on campus to essentially spread propaganda for the Chinese Communist Party. Can we expect any kind of executive action to curtail the presence of those Confucius Institutes on campus?
I think there's probably no administration that has been stronger on China in the last several decades than this administration. We're continuing to make sure that we're holding them accountable. So I think that your viewers should stay tuned for additional action we take on the Confucius Institutes, and and you, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
but I think that your viewers should rest assured that we're going to continue to hold China accountable.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the things we commonly hear people asking. You don't have Lincoln Institutes on Chinese university campuses. You don't have us exporting our ideas onto their campuses freely. I think people see that happening here, and they get fired up about it. So
it's hard to
people will be encouraged to hear that from you.
It's hard to think that some of our campuses could be more Marxist than they already are.
Yeah.
But the reality is that yes, we don't want to have that sort of foreign influence.
And so you mentioned some of the free speech initiatives on campus. You kind of touched a little bit on the administration stance. There was the executive order last year threatening to potentially revoke funding from universities that aren't upholding free speech. Where are we on that? We haven't seen universities lose funding yet as a result of that, but where is the administration as far as protecting free speech on campus moving forward now?
So Secretary DeVos, the Department of Education, is very committed to this issue, and she's continuing to move forward. I do think that you will see further action than the EO laid the groundwork for. But absolutely, we feel that First Amendment rights are enshrined in our Constitution, and the best place that I think students learn and is in a campus environment where you should feel free to challenge an idea or expose an idea and to be part of that debate. And if students are stifled in what they can actually say, stifled and sort of admonished for having certain viewpoints, then I think that the learning is disabled. And so we're seriously looking at whether or not there are places where we can withhold federal funding from universities that we think infringe upon First Amendment rights of college students.
And so you've experienced this firsthand. You were going down, you were doing something, I forget the exact story, we covered it though, where you had an event you were speaking at UVA, your alma mater, or I think you had been appointed there, and you experienced a little bit of cancel culture firsthand, people trying to say you can't be in this position, you can't bring him to talk because of his association with the administration. What's your thought on cancel culture in general? Is it real? Is it overblown? Is it legitimate? Is it something that the average American should be concerned about, this growing trend?
Oh, I think it's very real. I guess my experience I don't think was quite as severe. At the University of Virginia.
You should take that as an insult to your ego. You're just not important enough for them to.
They probably didn't have the sort of campus organization that you would have provided in opposition. But the Miller Center hosted me, and I was grateful for that appointment in my 6 months out of the administration. What was interesting to me, Cabot, is that inside the classroom, the college students were awesome. They don't all share support for the Trump administration or policies, but we had honest debate inside the classroom, and students came in very respectfully to share their opinion. Where the biggest protest came was from faculty totally unaffiliated with the Miller Center or what I was doing at the University of Virginia, who I think wanted to make a bigger stink in the community. And I think when you see that sort of pressure coming from faculty, I do think that is a greater concern. But outside of the university honored their commitment to me, and I was grateful for the chance to work down there. But there's a much greater, I think, challenges in cancel culture today. I think you do see it where, Cabot, if we're looking at the monuments that are being torn down in American history today, you know as well as I do, there's only one person who's ever walked on this earth who's without sin. And if we're going to hold our heroes to that sort of a standard, then there should be no monuments to anybody.
So in wrapping up, one of the things that when I talk to young people, they're most fired up about is student loan debt. And this is an issue you can't talk to young people without them bringing up. And so what can be done? Right now we're approaching $2 trillion in total student loan debt in America. It kind of seems like something that people are constantly looking away from when we're talking about higher education. What can the administration be doing to support students with so much debt, and what can we do to make sure that number doesn't keep climbing higher?
Yeah, it's become a real challenge for a lot of students who go to try and get a 4-year education and come out with an enormous burden of student debt. I think one of the things that's most helpful, though, Cabot, is actually providing more competition for our universities. I think many students today have opportunities to explore workforce development and explore vocational training that are other options that should be available. I think if that becomes a greater and greater avenue, then I think that will lead to lower tuition costs. I think on the debt issue, I think some people look at the problem and say, okay, how do we alleviate the debt the person has? I would rather look at how can we lower the cost of education as a better opportunity for us to make sure that students don't have that same burden. And right now, the federal government has a monopoly on student loans. I think we have to make sure that there's more competition in the environment that's providing those loans as well to help lower the cost of education.
So in closing, having talked to so many of the young voters this cycle so far, I hear kind of a sunshine and rainbow analysis of what they think a Biden presidency looks like. And I hear from them how all their problems will go away, they'll have free everything, it'll be great. I imagine you have a slightly different analysis of what that would look like. So in your opinion, what would a Biden presidency look like, especially for young people? What could they expect to see?
Well, I think that what typically is, we've seen this play out for centuries, is when you have a government in which you entrust to enforce greater and greater regulatory control over economy in a way to rebalance resources to provide equity, what you end up with is fewer opportunities for students, fewer opportunities for growth, fewer opportunities for advancement, fewer job opportunities. I think when you saw this administration lower the tax burden, lower the regulatory burden, that's when we created over 7.5 million new jobs in this country. Those are the policies I think you want to see. And I think that while sometimes the heavy hand of government sounds attractive and promising sort of a forced equity, the reality is it means there's less opportunity. And so therefore, we certainly approach this from a perspective of how can we provide more freedom as opposed to stronger government.
All right, Marc Short, thank you so much for joining us. I'm Cabot Phillips, Editor-in-Chief, Campus Reform. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Gab.
Thanks so much for watching. To see our latest video, click here. And to make sure you don't miss any future videos, be sure to subscribe. And since you're still here, give this video a thumbs up.